Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at a first-time filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay from the Movie Proposal Podcast. And with us is our first-time filmmaker, Christian Taylor.
Hello, Christian. Josh. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
You've got some American flag earrings? Is that
yes. As always, it's almost 4th of July as we record today. So today is Thursday, actually. So 4th of July is in a couple of days. I got to start the celebrations early. When you are the girl who wore freedom.
Right. And with us, as always, but unpatriotic looking, Jason Rudd.
Hey there.
Hello.
Hey, Jason.
And again, we have another guest, brand new to the Girl Who Wore Freedom. What do you say, Girl Who Wore Freedom publicist, Morgan Harris from Acacia Consulting. Welcome, Morgan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi.
We are excited to learn about Morgan and what he'll be doing. But first, we need some film updates. Christian, what's going on in the world of The Girl Who Wore Freedom?
Yeah, it's been a rough week, I have to say. I wish I could give you some good news, but, this is the life of a first-time filmmaker, so I got to be honest with you. In the last 24 hours, I've experienced a lot of rejection. I was sort of saying this earlier. It's now not going to be uncommon for us to be rejected from film festivals. In fact, we will be rejected from more than we will be accepted into. And especially when you submit to 100 all over the world, there's going to be more rejections. And I recognize that. But to get like 4 of them in a 24-hour period is really a lot. It's overwhelming. And we got turned down this week. Last week it was the Hamilton Film Festival in New York, which was a surprise because it's a smaller film festival and more like what my base would want to watch, I thought. And then yesterday we heard from the Skyline Indie Film Fest, which is in Winchester, Virginia, which I also thought we had a really good chance at because it's, sort of my target audience and area. And we did not get in there. We did not. And then the most disappointing of all was the Breckenridge Film Fest. Breckfest is a big film festival. It's been around for a lot of years. It is challenging to get into, but David Patterson had his film there, and we got a waiver to get in. And so I thought maybe we had a good chance there. And then we also heard from the Melbourne International Film Festival. They're doing a strange thing this year. They initially told us they were postponing all the way till next year. Then they decided they were going to have a hybrid festival, calling it, instead of their 69th edition, they're going to call it their 68 and a half edition. That's all online. That is this year. And we did not get accepted for that, though they did tell us they will keep us in consideration for their full film festival next year. So there was that. And the good news for today, with the bad news, it's always a little bit of good news, was that we heard from Miv Evans at the Trailer Film Festival. The Trailer Film Festival was something I submitted to on a whim. We did get in. And the Trailer Film Festival gives these trailers to curated distributors, sales agents, and production companies. And we've so far had 2 responses to that. And today we got our 3rd acquisition executive wanting to see the film. And Miv herself watched it. She's a critic in LA, and she said it was a really great film. And this is a wonderful time for a film like this. And I really have no notes for you. So that was encouraging today. So there's that. And then we've been working with Morgan. So we'll let you talk about what he's been doing this week. That gives us something positive to focus on.
Yeah, before we jump into Morgan, we're coming to you, Morgan, I promise.
Yep.
I challenge Christian on, yes, I think it's normal for a first-time filmmaker to face a lot of rejection, but I think it's normal for most any filmmakers to face rejection. Yeah. So whether this is your 3rd or 4th or 5th film, unless you're, David Fincher, Spielberg, I don't think it's ever going to be an easy road. And second, this podcast is telling a story. It's telling your story of making this film. Nobody wants a story where everything goes right.
Right.
So this has been a great story. So keep it up, Christian. You're doing great.
Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement. It reminds me of Ken Burns and his stories about how hard it's been and continues to be for him to make each documentary, to sell it. It's not always necessarily guaranteed ever with who he is and what he's done. So that's a good point for me to remember for sure.
But to help you get some wins, you brought on a new publicist.
I did.
So Morgan, we've got big expectations from you, buddy. We would love to hear first just about you. So Morgan, before we jump into what a publicist does, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Morgan Harris. I have been in publicity, specifically in entertainment publicity, for about 20 years, working for agencies in the Midwest primarily. And my clients have included gigantic studios, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, all the way to independent first-time directors who don't have a studio backing at all, and everything in between. Currently, as you said, I'm at Acacia Consulting Group, which I started with two partners a couple of years ago. And since then, we've brought on the kinds of studios, the kind of projects that we want to work on. That's kind of the luxury of having your own consultancy instead of having to do what your boss says. And so our current clients right now, we've done a lot of work with IFC Films. We've done some work with Showtime documentaries, with Netflix. And now we're obviously working with Christian on The Girl Who Wore Freedom. And so it's been an exciting ride, kind of getting to build the kind of film portfolio that we are interested in, films that actually have a story and a message that resonates. So,
yeah, when I first met Morgan, and he came recommended to me by Betsy Steinberg, who used to be the head of the Illinois Film Office. She herself is an award-winning filmmaker. She's just a great lady. She recommended Morgan, and I always talk, whenever I talk to people about being involved with this film, it's very important to me that we don't just hire them to do a job, or we don't just ask them to volunteer to do a job. We really want them to feel passionate about the story that we're telling. And so I had Morgan watch the film first, and he had a positive review, right, Morgan?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I told Christian at the time, right after I saw the film, I have no attention span anymore. Like the last 4 years especially have just been so crazy that it's just like, I can't sit and watch something without being on my phone, without needing external stimulus. And so I sat down to watch The Girl Who Wore Freedom, and, had my phone clutched in my hand. My hand, naturally, curls like this when it's not holding my phone. So was scrolling through Twitter and started, watching the film. And, 80 minutes later, I started crying twice. My phone was ignored. And it was really a pretty rare occurrence for me to be able to focus in on something in that mindset. So that's immediately where I was just like, okay, I really want to work on this. And I was texting my two partners too at the same, because they were watching the film in their respective homes, because of course we're all socially distancing. And it was just texting them throughout it, just being like, are you guys having the same reaction? And yes. So we knew that, it was a film that had a spark that we wanted to promote and help, tell people about. So, which is.
Yeah. And it's super important for us that the people representing and saying, hey, you should watch this, feel that way about the film, I thought. So when we found out that they felt that way, and I listened to Morgan about his view of how a publicist really should market a film, which is, he can talk more about what his job is. I really loved his vision. It's, I think it's a little bit different. It's outside the box, and I liked his outside the box thinking. So talk a little bit about that, Morgan.
Yeah, well, first, to an earlier point about publicists, when somebody says, I really want you to watch this film, and them having to believe it, something that I've taught publicists, throughout my career has been, you cannot lie to the press. If you tell somebody that you are personally endorsing a film, you've got to be able to back it up. Otherwise, your reputation, they're never going to listen to you again. So there's plenty of films that I've worked on where, a critic or a reporter will call and say, what did you think of the film? And it's like, well, it had an excellent running time. Like the sound mix was perfect. The thickness of the film was right on point. But it's rare, like the ones that I'm actually saying like, no, I really liked this movie. I truly did like the movie if I'm saying that to somebody, because I want, my own credibility to survive and like be. And that's also how those relationships with press are formed, where now I always say to new clients who've never worked with a publicist before, publicists cannot guarantee coverage. We cannot guarantee results because we're not newspaper editors or publishers. We're not news producers. But what we can do is guarantee that reporters will open the email and read the pitch and read about the whatever's being talked about, so that they can make that decision. And that's the value of bringing on a publicist. We put you, the project, in the best possible position to get some attention and some coverage. And that's kind of the broad umbrella of what a publicist should be doing. I think what Christian mentioned about our approach to this film, when people are siloed in their own bubbles, you start to fall for the trap of only talk to people who already agree with you or are already paying attention to you, and that doesn't grow your audience. And so whether we're working with a film project or a politician, the goal is always to reach people who would be interested in the subject matter if they knew about it, but they're not following traditional media that is focused on that subject matter. For example, for this film, we want to get it in front of politics reporters. We want to get it in front of people who are reporting about women in the workplace, because Christian, is a first-time director, is a woman, and that's so they're not the same people that are reading the entertainment section every week. The people that are reading the entertainment section every week, we absolutely want to be in front of them as well. But we recognize that they've already made up their mind about what they're going to be seeing, what kinds of film they're interested in, all of those kinds of decisions that consumers are making. They're just reading along to follow the industry and to follow the culture, which is certainly valuable. But again, it's not bringing anybody new into the fold, and that's our underlying goal.
So, as you come up with a strategy to reach political reporters, I don't know how you'd say it, women's groups or whatever that might be interested in learning about Christian, how do you do that? I mean, are you just emailing people? Do you have contact? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say it's a little more challenging in the age of COVID because, we have everyone's work numbers, but no one's at their desk. So phone calls become a little more challenging. So yeah, it is a lot of emailing and a lot of relationship building and researching. I mean, the first thing, the biggest mistake a publicist makes is pitching on blast a whole group of people or an individual reporter without knowing what that person covers. The number of times reporters get hit with oh, I saw you did a story about hot sauce. I would like to get my hot sauce client included. Well, we just did that story. We're not doing that story again. We did it last week. We're not doing it this week. Like, pay attention, or pitching stories to reporters who don't cover the beat at all. And that actually becomes kind of a fine line with film, because there are internal politics at any news organization, just like in any company, where people have their responsibilities and they don't like when their responsibilities get encroached upon. So if we have a film and we want to reach out to the political editor and say, this is a political film, you should really watch this film, we also at the same time want to be looping in the film team and the entertainment critic and saying, look, we're not stepping on your toes. This just crosses a couple of different lines, and we want to make sure that everybody is brought in so that people don't come at it from an adversarial place. It's understanding how a workplace dynamics a little bit. and then kind of instead of throwing this at a film editor or a political editor, and I keep using political editor just as a for instance in this case, you want to bring them on board and let them help you be the champion for the film. Like give somebody a chance to see it first. They've discovered it. They now get to tell people about it.
So are you saying that like you might hurt the film critic's feelings if you told a political reporter about the movie and not the film critic?
If you give a reporter a scoop on any topic, you are, by definition, not giving somebody else that scoop. So you have to make sure that you're being purposeful and inclusive and strategic when you're making those decisions.
Okay.
Yeah. A great example is Julie and Julia, the Julia Childs.
I love that movie.
Yeah. And obviously, right, like anybody who knows anything about Julia Child would immediately be thinking, boy, like this would be fun to see in the food section of the paper, or, like that sort of thing. But the first step is always calling the film editor and saying, hey, this would be a great film for the food editor to get involved in. We would like to reach out to them. What do you think? And having them say, like the minute they give their blessing, then they are, then they're part of the ride. They're being involved, and you're not shutting them out. There's no threat there, because I don't know how the food editor and the entertainment editor get along in the newsroom. Like one of them might leave their dishes in the sink all the time and make the other one angry, and like so you don't want to suddenly insert yourself in the middle of that. So you come in with looking for some advocacy, basically.
I was just going to say, this is why I knew it was important to seek a publicist for the film, because I do not have this expertise. And I think let's answer the question, Morgan, first, why a film needs a publicist.
Sure. There are a number of... so... By and large, the main goal of the publicist is to let people know the film is coming, right? Like we can't control how a critic is going to review the film. Reviews are entirely subjective. And so it's literally one person's opinion, and that's going to be different than every other person's opinion. But if you don't have somebody who knows how to do the research, who has the time and is like dedicated to doing the research, into finding out how to contact each of these critics and each of these reporters to just let them know that the film is coming and that they should take a look at it, then you're going to be missing out on opportunities. Certainly there are, it's easy enough to look at any given city and figure out which the biggest newspaper is and figure out who the film critic is at that newspaper. But so much of the film community is online. So much of the film community is in very localized critics groups. And so if you're only going after the major daily in the market, you're missing 60 other outlets, 60 other people who are talking about film and who have a following that knows to look to them to find out when a movie is available, what's opening this weekend, what's on Netflix now, all of that kind of stuff. People have their habits that they go to. So you want to make sure that that your publicist is acting in that kind of megaphone capacity. The other piece is writing a pitch is not as intuitive as people might think. You've got, especially in film, you've got so much competition. Every weekend, 8-10 films are opening at least. When you're in a film festival, there are 200 other films that are screening. And what are you doing to be noticed? How are you positioning yourself as the one to pay attention to with, a film critic, a film section of the paper, the entertainment segment of the news does not expand and contract based on how much product is in the market. It's always the same length. And so how are you going to make sure that you're included in that limited space? And then the third and final thing is you never know what's going to happen with the press. You never know what's going to happen in the world. We're in a pandemic situation right now. A huge a huge part of the responsibilities of publicists right now is crisis and messaging through a crisis, and having that the ability to kind of keep on reinforcing the message of the film and reminding people about it while other things are going on that are impacting coverage, impacting your ability to get the word out. So
what is the message right now? Like, because, you know, The Guerrilla War Freedom is not being released in theaters, you know, nationwide on July 4th. So, I mean, they're trying to figure that out right now, right? You're trying to get into film festivals, trying to find a partner to distribute it, that sort of thing. So what's the message right now?
So right now, that's a great question. And right now, the first step for us, the minute we came on board, was to take a look at all the materials that already existed, that had been written by the production team, and answer that question. What is our headline thought? What's our log line, you know, which is like a 1 or 2 sentence message about what the film is, and then what's the broader message? What's the larger synopsis? And so that's what we've spent the last week and a half-ish doing, is creating press notes, which is the kind of the guiding, the message guide for the campaign. And what that does is allows us to identify the keywords that we're going to be repeating a lot, and then make sure that the synopsis is the same everywhere it appears, whether it's on the website, whether it's what's going to be printed in festival booklets when the film is in a festival, all of those kinds of places and touch points for consumers, so that no matter where they're entering the conversation, they're hearing the same message. Part of communications work is repetition. Consumers need to hear a message 12 to 15 times before they even start remembering it, and then you can move them. You know, they've got to remember you before you can move them to action, and so that's why it's important that everything be aligned and everything be the same. So
let me give you a specific example, which I think is fascinating. So like he said, we are working on this document. It's a working document that they did take everything that we have on our website or materials that I'd sent them in the past. They read all those, they watched the film, and they're trying to figure out how to synthesize what we've said and written in a better way, because we do have some writing experience, but not necessarily what's needed to put our best foot forward, because that's not our forte. And so they took all that and tried to figure out, how can we take this product and market and package it in a way that is, that entices other people to pay attention. And the thing that I thought was so interesting is what they did with our log line. If you go to our website now, and this will change, but if you go to our website now, the log line reads this. Stand by, it's coming up. All right, the log line says, "The untold World War II stories of the men, women, and children of Normandy, France, who lived through German occupation, the D-Day invasion, and the liberation by Allied forces, and their efforts to never forget." Which isn't horrible, but it's also not attention-grabbing necessarily, particularly in a pandemic. So the document that Morgan and his team sent me this week tweaked the log line to say this: "Discover the untold stories of D-Day from the men, women, and children who lived through German occupation and Allied liberation of Normandy, France. Powerful and deeply personal, The Girl Who Wore Freedom tells the story of an America that lived its values, instilling a pride in a country that is in danger of becoming a relic of the past." You see what they did there?
That's pretty good.
It's super good.
Yeah.
Because they are making people stand up and be like, "What do you mean by that?"
Right.
Or making people say, they really get it. You know,
Yeah.
It was beautiful how they took relic of the past, which is exactly what Normandy is, and wove it through that. I could never have come up with that. And
it's the difference between telling somebody the facts and bringing somebody into the story. That's kind of because the original logline was absolutely correct. Like, that is empirically what the film is about. but people already kind of, general audiences are already going to know a lot of those keywords, and so you want to bring them in, and by starting out with discovering, I mean, that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier about with the press, is you want humans love being the first to discover something. They don't want to be told what's interesting and what's cool and what's new. They want to find it themselves and then be a champion for that. And so that's kind of inviting people in to make that discovery on their own, and then they become ambassadors for you, almost by accident. So
yeah, and what I loved about the what they did with the logline is, my first thought after I finished reading that was, ooh, what does that mean? Like, it gave a question in my mind that I was like, well, I want to see what they're talking about. And that is what you want. That is what we're paying them for, this month. And it's worth every penny, in my opinion, because there is a lot of noise out there right now. And the people that we want to pay attention to us are varied. Ultimately, our buyers are distributors. But right now, we want to get a regular, average, everyday people interested in our film so they can like all of our social media, because we're trying to raise those numbers. We're trying to get film festivals to pay attention to us. And right now, I hate to tell you, our story isn't the most pressing thing on everyone's minds. It's health concerns, it's racial injustice, it's, politics and the world being divided. Those are the megaphones of our moment. And our film, I've been thinking about this as we've been experiencing these rejections. Even though people watch it and always say, this is a film for this moment in time, we need something like this. That is true. People, when they watch it, are inspired. They feel better. They're reminded of what America was when she was at her best. But I don't know that festival planners are going to choose it, because it is not incendiary or attention grabbing necessarily. So, and also I remember I talked to Helen Patton, who is General George Patton's granddaughter. And she said to me, I have to tell you what I thought about you when I first met you. I thought you were just one of these like flag waving, patriotic people that, isn't really listening. And, she put me in this box because of our film title, or because I wore American flag things that I don't fit in. And it took her talking to me a little bit before she realized I was more than what she just saw on the outside. And that's the same for our film. We have to somehow break through all of that going on right now. And I think I found my ace in the hole.
So Morgan, can you maybe just kind of paint a picture for us, maybe some examples of like, when your job is done here, what would a successful Publicist campaign look like for The Girl Who Wore Freedom? Like, just some examples of wow, that worked.
Yeah. Well, that is a very difficult question to answer in the middle of a pandemic, because everything that was true 4 months ago is no longer true. So we're kind of a little bit making it up as we go. Ideally, if we were looking at past campaigns, so right now, as everybody listening knows, the film is complete, and it's in the film festival phase. And so your campaign in the film festival phase becomes a little bit different than a general release plan. So right now, I don't want a big story in the Chicago Tribune hitting now if we're going to be in the Chicago Film Festival in October, because the press is only going to cover your story once, and we want that hit to be as close to when the public can actually engage with the film as possible. And so as we get accepted to different festivals, we shift all of our energy. Once we have all of our kind of governing documents, the press notes, template press releases, all of those kinds of things written, we start focusing in on specific regions that cover the festivals that we're in. pitching features, pitching inclusions, pitching, which it includes. So a feature is a big story that focuses on the film, usually because of a filmmaker, some talent that's in the film, subjects of a documentary, the topic, whatever. It focuses, it's an objective piece. An inclusion or a mention would be when a story is covering a number of titles that's in the same festival. We want to make sure that we're in that story because they can't cover all 200. They'll pick out the 10 films you've got to see at this film festival. We want to position ourselves to be one of those 10. And then there are reviews that'll come out around the time of the festival. Once you've put your film in a film festival, what's called the review embargo is lifted. Now that the film has been screened publicly, any reviewer can review it on their own timetable. Whereas when you're doing a campaign for a film that's not doing the film festival circuit, let's say, Star Wars, big film, everybody wants to review it, but there's a trick. If you are a reporter and we invite you to a screening, by attending the screening, you agree that you're not going to review it before we say you can, because we don't want secrets to get out. We don't want this city to review and this other city not to, and to create kind of an imbalance in coverage. We want to make sure that, as I said, repetition is important. We want to make sure that all the reviews hit at the same time to get the biggest kind of cultural awareness all at the same time instead of dispersing it. So all of those things come into play with reviews. So as I say, with a film festival, you've now screened the film publicly, so everyone in that market can review it. We want them to review the film. If it's in a film festival, chances are we think it's pretty good and are welcoming reviews. We're not scared of reviews. So, and then those reviews can help the next film festival pitch and the next and the next and the next. You get kind of some independent third-party validators, essentially, to say, no, you should take a look at this film, next film festival programming team, and choose it. So to back up a little bit, our idea of success right now is to get into some of these festivals, to get some features in that market's local media, and to get some reviews, some positive reviews, knock on wood, but to get some reviews so that we have a portfolio that can then go to, that can then be used as the rest of the campaign rolls out.
And since we've been accepted into the first film festival that shall not be named until they announce it, since it's in October, so we know that's why we're getting this jump on things now. We know that we need to get our ducks in a row. It is possible that we will be accepted into other film festivals before that one, because there's still a lot we need to hear from. But at least our messaging will have started. This is not a quick process. It takes a long time for us to compile these documents. Yep. So that's why we brought them on when we did.
Yep, and going to social media, which you mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that the social media team is using the same type of language that we are and in the press notes. Again, it's about that consistency and that reinforcement of the message.
So for a film like The Girl Who Wore Freedom, how long would you generally say a campaign would run for, a documentary film, that sort of thing? How long would you and your team be working on this?
So normally we would be looking, if you're putting your doc out on the festival circuit, you're usually looking at least an 8-month, up to 18-month run doing festival screenings throughout, just because of how the festival calendar works. At some point in there, the hope is that a distributor, that the filmmakers and a distributor come along and they make a deal. Once a distributor comes in, we take a step back, and because the distributor, as part of their agreement, takes over all marketing of the film, and they all have their own internal teams. We would certainly be available to them if they wanted to utilize us, but if they have other agencies already, at that point, that's when it leaves the festival phase and enters the general distribution phase. So it's an open question, but that's generally when you're starting a festival campaign. That's usually the time frame based on when all the festivals around the world are.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to reading about the girl who wore freedom in USA Today. I don't know, something, right? Before we wrap up, Christian, you got anything else we need to cover? Any updates?
Well, I was going to say, my hope is that you will eventually read about it in the Chicago Tribune, because I really do hope we get into the Chicago Film Festival, which is in November or October? October, yeah. So hopefully that will happen. No, the only other thing is, we still are looking for people to help us pay Morgan's salary, as well as pay our contractors that helped us make the film. So we still are looking for donations that are tax deductible. You can find that on our website. And we still have our NormandyStories.com, the Girl Who Wore Freedom shop, which has wonderful things that people can purchase. We just put out a new blog today for the 4th of July that's really awesome. It talks about Charles Shea and Marie Pascal Legrand. They have a very special relationship. She took him in as a World War II veteran, brought him over from the United States because he wasn't being cared for well here. And she's given him an amazing life. And so that's on our website, came out today. So that's about it for now. And I'm looking forward to bringing you some good news next week.
All right. Well, Morgan, thanks for being on the podcast. We're excited you're on the team.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for us. So thanks, everyone, for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it.
You sure can. Bye, everybody.